What's going on, everyone? DarkScheme here, and today I have a little frag grenade tutorial for you all. And I was really thinking about this, and I was thinking maybe I could make a tutorial on grenades, as that is kind of an aspect of Halo that isn't really talked about too much, and I think it is definitely important. So I'll be kind of going into the basics, kind of an intro, and just things that I feel will improve your game right off the bat. So for frag grenades, for starters, it does have its uses. Not only does it do damage, it can help you clean up kills with players who are behind walls. It also helps deny an area from an enemy team. So let's say, for example, you are going for sniper at the beginning of the game. Well, obviously you know that the enemy team is probably going for that sniper as well. So what do? You throw grenades, and if they're good enough, they'll help you do damage to the enemy team. And they kind of just help in that respect. It isn't the best. I definitely think that the splinter grenade is probably the best for denying an area. And of course, plasma grenades have a pretty big explosion as well. But the thing about frags is that you can bounce them. You can make them bounce off walls, and they go a pretty big distance. Obviously, a lot farther than plasma grenades or even splinter grenades. And one thing that is, I think, very key for frag grenades, and really in general in Halo, since Halo 4, any type of damage that you do to the enemy team will ping hit markers in the middle of your screen, meaning that you'll get an idea of where the enemy team is. So let's say, for example, you are pushing into the red base and you're thinking there might be somebody in the red cave. You're not really sure if they're there, and you kind of don't want to push out all the way over here and kind of end up in a spot where you're going to die because you pushed up too far. Well, you can obviously throw a grenade, and if you get at least a few hit markers, you now know that there's an enemy team there. One thing to take into account is, depending on how close the grenade is to the opponent, is how much damage it will do. So if I throw a grenade like this, they're hiding behind the wall and kind of just engage after that. The element of surprise is pretty much gone off at their end, and if you did throw a pretty good grenade, then you are already up in damage in that 1v1. So the next thing I will address with grenades is a few of the common mistakes that I see, and even some of these mistakes I still make as well. One of the first ones is throwing grenades at an opponent. So let's say you're in a 1v1 up here on top mid, and there's an enemy right in front of you. I see a few people kind of throwing these grenades at them, and while that works for other grenades, for frag grenades, it doesn't really work. Sure, you can bounce it off their bodies, but there is a very low percentage that once it hits them, once it pegs them, it's going to bounce and actually do decent damage. So instead, what you want to do is kind of just throw the grenade at their feet, and that's kind of just going into a few tips a little bit later. Another misconception with throwing grenades is kind of throwing them off the spawn and throwing these weird Hail Marys. So of course, you are spawning with 2 grenades, and you spawn at the beginning of the game. You're thinking to yourself, oh, I know that they're going to be over here, so I'm going to throw a grenade into their base. 1, 2, and guess what? Oh, you get a hit marker, and you know they're there, but guess what? 15 seconds later, they're going to be hiding, and you don't really know where they are in the map. It's more worth keeping those grenades and saving them for later. Because you do have 2 grenades in Halo, it's definitely worth thinking about how to use them and using them sparingly. Another common mistake that I see a lot, and I even do this sometimes as well, is throwing grenades in a gunfight. So let's say, once again, you're in a 1v1, you guys are even in shots. You get each other one shot, you only need one more headshot, he only needs one more headshot as well, he backs off, and you throw a grenade. Guess what? There's a small chance, a small window where he can actually jump at you, get aggressive, and shoot you in the head, and you can't really do anything about it because you're throwing a grenade, and you can't get out of that. Of course, that is one of many scenarios you can't really choose. You know, maybe there is a chance that you have thruster and the other opponent doesn't have thruster. But it is all depending, and that's getting into a little bit more of the advanced things, but throwing a grenade mid-fight is definitely one thing that I would say to try and tone down. Try and shoot people as much as possible, and try to throw less grenades. And the last thing that I will say for mistakes is throwing panic grenades. Let's say you're in your base, and somebody gets a flank on you, they're shooting you in the back, and you kind of just freak out, you're thinking, oh crap, I'm gonna die. So you kind of just look down, you throw grenades wildly. And while that might do damage, it might also not do damage, and you might just end up dying. The enemy has full health going into your base. Teammate spawns in, and he pretty much gets killed in a even 1v1, and that guy gets an easy double kill and starts running the flag pretty much for free. So chances are, you're getting shot in the back, you're gonna die, but instead of what you can do is actually turn around, put in at least 2 or 3 shots into the opponent, and that way when you do die and your teammate spawns in, they are going to only have to shoot that opponent 2 times, one in the body and once more in the head when they're one shot, and win that gunfight. So those are a few of the mistakes that I have really seen. Those are more so the common ones that I've seen. But getting right into some tips, I think one of the things that is important with grenades is to try and keep at least 1 grenade for damage. So essentially what you're doing is you have 2 grenades in your disposal. You can use one to deny an area, or you can use one to try and see if there's an enemy team around this area right here. And that last grenade you can kind of use just in case you want to do some damage. So let's say this guy is going into the cave, you pop his shields, he's one shot, then you can easily throw that grenade. Chances are you get a good grenade throw and he dies. So those are the uses that I definitely think keeping at least 1 grenade could use. 1 for damage and 1 for denying area or any other kind of utility for that grenade. And another tip that I can give you guys is definitely pick up grenades. On the map, grenades are like power weapons. They spawn at a certain part of the map and they are worth picking up. So for Coliseum, for example, they do spawn in this bottom maze area, 2 here and 2 on the other side. And the final thing that I will say about grenades, and I think this is one of the biggest tips that I can give, is to bank them. Bank those grenades. You don't have to always throw them at your opponent. You can toss them off walls. You can toss them off ceilings. You don't want to throw a too predictive grenade, so instead what you do is you kind of throw this off the ceiling, it bounces straight down, and it gets a pretty good grenade at the feet of your enemy. And what you could also do is bank a nade off the ground. I think this is actually one of my favorite things to do in Halo 5. In Halo in general, is to just throw a grenade off the ground. Throwing a grenade, it kind of gives you this kind of idea where you know where the grenade's going to end. Whereas if you throw it off the ground, it goes maybe a little too far, or maybe it doesn't go far enough when you throw it. So throwing it straight off the ground near you is definitely helpful. One thing for sure is if you are in a scenario where you're up here top middle and you know there's going to be an opponent, instead of throwing a grenade here, it going past them and not doing enough damage, you can actually get it so that if they're going to clamber up, you can throw a grenade at your feet, and guess what? Lo and behold, that grenade bounces right into their faces and kills them quite easily. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the tips that I have for you guys. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about frag grenades and grenades in general, and hopefully you can implement some of these tips into your game, stop making some of those common mistakes, and improving your Halo game in general. So let me know, were these tips helpful for you? And if not, what kind of tips are you looking for? What are you looking to improve in your Halo 5 game? Maybe your grenade game is already on point and you need help with something else. And as always, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.